All right, welcome back to another episode here of building this giant Lego. We are now working on the bearing element 2x2. So, a couple things that I want to note as we're looking at this. We can see that there's going to be an overhang here, and we need to put a 1x2 underneath that. And this is a 1x2, so that should be flush here in the front. And then since we built the propeller, we're going to be using the dimensions of the propeller to help us make this piece. This piece is rather challenging, but I think we'll be all right as we get into this and see how we do here. So let's start with let's tackle the main section, and then we'll come back and we'll do this pin section right here, and then I'll talk to you about how we do some testing with 3D printing where we don't have to 3D print the entire part to do this. So here we go. So I took my Lego master file. I did a save as. We're going to save it as a bearing element here. And then we're going to turn off that sketch. We're going to create a new sketch. And just like normal, we're going to start, this time I'm going to start with the 2x2. So we're going to do Lego base times 2. And we're going to make this one equal to this. I'm going to extrude it by partial. And then we're going to come underneath. And you know what? I think I might go ahead and do the offset, face offset at this point. I think it'll be easier if we just knock that out. So we're going to do our face offset right here. Negative curve. And then I'm going to start building on the underneath side of this. So I'm going to create a sketch on the bottom here. And we're going to go rectangle from this point. We are not going to the midline. So just as a reminder, this is not Lego base. This is Lego base minus 2 curve is what this is. So if we were to zoom in and put a point, you'll see that the midpoint right here, and if we dimension, this should be 1 curve away from that midpoint. So we're just verifying that. So that's correct. That looks good. I'm going to finish that sketch. We'll do our extrusion of this. That's going to be a partial height as well. It's this good looking start. Now we're going to put our studs on top. So again, I'm going to put a couple of construction lines. Now these are going to be right down the middle because we're going to put our circles not in the middle of these sections, but we're going to put them so that they are symmetrical about these center lines, the way we've got it. So we're going to dimension one of them to stud diameter. We're going to use equals constraints. Again, you could do one in dimension 1 to the middle, and then you could from there do a rectangle pattern. That's kind of up to you, but to me this is a little faster for me to just do this. And then here's where the magic happens. Symmetry tool from here to here, and then symmetry tool here to here. This constrains everything up. And then we can do our extrusion. This is going to be stud height. And now we want to do the cutouts. The cutouts on the bottom, it's a normal cutout on this one. And then this one has again, they're trying to save material, so they're just like little studs that stick out. I'm not going to do that. I think it's just kind of silly. Like, we're not trying to save material because we're not injection molding. So we're just going to do the normal way that we remove this. So the first one I'm just going to do from here. I'm going to project these 2 circles. It's going to help me out with doing this. Say OK. And then if you remember, we want to make these construction lines so that we're not worried about them. And do our rectangle tool. that here. And then we are going to, that should have been a construction line, but that's okay. We can just go back and X on all these. And then we're going to make them tangent. We've done every other time making this shape. Then we're going to do an offset of this. It's going to go in curve. And I'm going to make a construction line that runs right down here. Make a circle that's in the middle to tangent. Then I'm going to offset that. Again, hit X so it's no longer a construction line. This is curve times 5/4, I believe. I think it should be 0.379. Let's just check. There it is. So yeah, 5/4 on that one. I'm going to finish that sketch. I can now do an extrusion of this, and it's going to be a negative hole depth to push up into that space. And then here's kind of the cool thing is we just want to move that over to here, that same drawing. We might be able to do that. Yeah, I think we can. So watch what we're going to do. We're going to say, okay, make a new sketch here. And then we're going to project geometry. So I'm going to hit project, and I'm going to project this geometry. And then I'm going to find the midline of this part right here, which is, let's see if we can project this. Now we got a line across the top. Now when I find the line, there's my midline. I'm just going to bring the midline down. We're going to hit X, so it's a construction line. And we're just going to drop it. We just want it to be perpendicular. And you can see it's not on that point. We're going to make that a construction line. And then check out what we do here. So instead of drawing all that same stuff, we're just going to use the mirror tool. And we're going to mirror all that about that point right. Oops. We don't want that one. That's going to be our mirror line. I'm going to say OK. Now, how do we know it's in the middle where it should be? Well, we're going to just do a quick check with dimensions. So I'm going to dimension from this edge to this edge, and that's 0.185. And I'm going to dimension from here to here, and that should be the same. And it just is. So that's another way to do it. I don't know if it's a shortcut or not, because by the time you check everything, was it really a shortcut? Who knows? But kind of fun just to do and try new things. So thought that would be fun to do. All right, we're going to do our chamfer of all of this stuff. So now we're going to look at that. I'm going to do all our lines here. Do this. These for here. Curve times 2. Okay, so this all looks good. Like that. That's pretty straightforward on how to get that to line up and do its thing. And now we're ready to do the bulk of the hard work. So let's just look at it. It does have a circle, so you can see that that circle is tangent, it looks like, to the top surface there. And then it's got a couple of rectangles off the side where they've done kind of a angle, and then we'll probably extrude that. So let's do this little detail that's attached to the block first. We'll get some measurements off the real thing so we know how tall that is, that it sticks out, and then we'll figure out how wide that is from there to there and from there to there. And we'll also get the circle diameter. So let's grab a few of those dimensions off the real deal. And I'm just going to show you kind of setup-wise how I'm going to do this. So I'm going to do a line down the middle. About that. And then I'm just going to show you a couple things. So I'm going to do a circle here. And then I'm going to create a rectangle that goes like this. And then I probably need a line that just goes across that. so I can do some symmetry stuff. But this is what I'm going to draw, and now I just need to grab some dimensions from my part. So we'll start with the circle. Circle diameter looks like it is 0.163. So the diameter of this thing is 0.163 times scale. And then that's a legit line, so we change that. And then let's find the distance that this is. So this is the whole kind of square that kind of runs right down the middle. And that is 0.305. So 0.305 times scale. And now that is centered along there. So I'm going to use my symmetry tool again to say that these two lines are symmetrical about that midline. And then I'm going to figure out the thickness of this rectangle. It is 86 thousandths. So the thickness here is 0.086 times scale. And then these two lines need to be symmetrical about that. So we're going to use our symmetry tool to say these two lines have symmetry about that. And then all of these are no longer construction lines. And we'll finish that sketch. We're going to extrude all of this out. And this is kind of a tough dimension to get because it's nestled in here pretty tight. So we might have to guess on this just a little bit. So it looks like it's around 30 thousandths. So 0.03 times scale. And then when we do our cutouts, we'll see what that looks like. So then we're going to come down here. We're going to create a sketch on the bottom. Rotate. And then I'm going to project this. And essentially we're going to have a line that goes from here up to about here. And from here up to about here. And I'm just going to say these are equal to each other. And then I'm going to dimension from this point to this point. And this is going to be kind of, again, ballparked. It doesn't really make a huge difference on what this is, but it's probably 20 thousandths, 0.02 times scale. And then we'll say finish sketch. And we're going to extrude these two little things here and cut that away to get this right there, that look. And if we kind of put it back into this view and take a look, minus the fillets that are on there, I think that looks pretty darn good with what we decided on there. So I'm going to be happy with that. I think that looks great. We're going to move on. So now we're going to put a circle right in the middle of this, and this is going to be small shaft. And now we could take some kerf off of this, but I'm hesitant to do that because again, it should basically be small shaft, I think, on this is what I feel. And then we know that this extrudes out 0.17 times scale. We already took that measurement earlier today. And that's just the part that's smooth that the propeller is going to sit on. And then it has this part on the outside that we've got to create. It's like a little lip that goes around this part. And yeah, I've made a few of these before, but I'm not sure what I did to make them, so I'm gonna just try again. I forget if I made like an ellipse. I think I might have made an ellipse is what I did. And I think we did something like this. And then, yeah, this is what I did. And then something like this. And then this diameter here is going to be small shaft And then we want to add like plus 3 times curve. So it sticks out just a little bit, but not much, maybe 4 curve. Oh, yeah, it's got to be, it would almost be 6 curve because this is the whole length. So if we only did 4 kerf, that's 2 kerf on this side and 2 on this side. And I think I want to do like 3 kerf on each side. So if I did 6 kerf and it sticks out, that's probably too much. So let's do 4 kerf. So we got 2 kerf on each side sticking out on this to hold it in place. I like that. And then we're going to extrude this by 0.01 times scale. Let's see what that gives us. So, oops. Gotta hit the outside edges here too. So now we've created kind of this little bit of a ledge. Now that's probably not enough actually, looking at that. That doesn't look like, see that? Doesn't look enough. So I'm gonna go back and, not that one, back to this sketch. And let's do, oh, I only did 2 kerf. Let's do 4 kerf. Okay, what doesn't it look like? There we go. Okay, that's a little better. You can see that's there. I might do even just, I think a smidge more is necessary. Just a little bit. So let's do 6 kerf. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, I think that looks better for what we're grabbing there. And then we're going to create a new sketch on this end. And this one's kind of fun to do because really we are going to find the center point here. We're going to go up and then we're just going to make a rectangle. And that rectangle is just going to be, basically just needs to be something like this that we then constrain and say that these 2 lines are symmetrical about this. And we're just going to dimension between the lines. And that's going to be the gap that's in between these, the space between there, because there's like a little slit. It's like 25 thousandths. So what I'm talking about now is the little slit gap between there on that. So let's do 25 thousandths times scale. And then they actually, I think, cut. That's okay. It'll be good. And then they use this to cut down into the part, it looks like going this way. And that looks pretty good. Let me just check. Kind of, again, this is another ballpark. I don't have a tool that goes, it's that small that can reach down into that space. But yeah, it looks like it's 0.1. So 0.1 times scale is going to give you negative 0.3. So negative 0.1 times scale. There's our part that goes through there. That looks pretty good. I'm going to do a little bit of a fillet on these edges. If I did kerf times 3. Times 2. Yeah, kerf times 2 maybe. And then let's do some fillets in this space. We don't want these to be like this because they will be a problem. So if we did kerf times 8 times 9, that looks pretty good. And then I think I'm going to do some fillets all along here. do kerf times, let's do kerf. And I'm pretty happy with that as something that might hold that pin. This is going to need some testing. Okay, it's not perfect for sure. Definitely not perfect, but it's close, and that's the key. We want to be close. We want it to just work. So I'm going to put a kerf times 2 on this, on these. That looks good. This looks pretty good. Again, I am a little concerned about this. Is it going to hold the propeller on? Is it not? So I'm kind of, do I need to adjust the kerf on the propeller? So this is where I need to do some testing at this point. So you're like, well, how do I do testing and not print the whole part? And we really should have talked about this at the very beginning. But since I've given you most of the dimensions, like this is what we would do if we're testing everything for the first time and like we're making a part. This is my critical piece. These, I'm pretty sure that these are going to work because we've used this all the time. It's pretty straightforward. So how do I make it so I just test this? And this is kind of a beautiful thing to learn. So you just pick a sketch or pick a plane, and then I'm just going to make a giant rectangle over the part that I want to keep. So this right here is what I want to keep. So now when I do an extrude of this, it looks like I'm cutting it away. Well, it's because I am, because I'm using cut. But if you pick intersect, it now will only keep this part where those two sketches intersected each other, or the sketch intersected with the body. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to go to utilities and make, and I'm going to call this like bearing test. And then I'm going to say yes. And then I'm going to go to my Bamboo Studio. I'm going to pick a new plate. I'm going to add a part. I'm going to go to my bearing test. And then I want to print it in the orientation that I'm going to print it when I actually make it. So I'm probably going to print it in this orientation right here. Or I could test it in this one, and I could also flip it so that I test it in this orientation, because maybe when I make the parts themselves, maybe I have them so that they're flat, or maybe I have it so that it's sticking up, and then I test those out in those different orientations. So that's what you need to decide, but you can do this by just doing a test print. And you can click on the part, you can then say lay on face, and you can have it lay on this face, and then you print it. When you do a slice plate, it's going to put your supports underneath just like this, and then you're going to see, does the propeller spin when it's in this orientation? This is probably a good orientation for it to be in, honestly. And then having kerf times 3 is probably not a huge issue, because again, this is going to be fairly rough. We might have to take some sandpaper and sand it down a little bit if we print in this orientation, but that's part of it. I try to print circles as much as I can where they are straight, like where the circle is on the plate, but that's where some testing can be done. And that's how you do it, where you don't have to print the whole entire part. And then it's super easy to go back to this and be like, oh, just delete that last extrusion, delete the sketch, and now I'm back to where I was here. If you don't like or have to change a dimension, like, oh, it didn't hold on there, like this needs to be bigger. So I can go back to that sketch, which is this one here. It's like, okay, kerf, 6 kerf was not enough. Maybe I need to go 8 kerf to widen that up. So now you can see it widens that up a little bit. I can finish the sketch, and now I've got a little bit more lip to hang on to that part. And this might work good. So those are the things that you have to do when you're testing out pieces. And that's part of the hard work of getting these so that they fit the way that you want them to fit. But there we have it. It's a tough piece. Good luck. I'm excited to see you continue to build parts and pieces. Again, stop watching, start making. Make something great today. We'll see you next time.